Hey guys, welcome to The Strong Young Man. Throughout your life, there will be times where you realise that you need to break off certain relationships. It could be that a person is toxic, envious, has betrayed your trust, or has irritated you beyond breaking point. You must ostracise toxic people and erect a strong perimeter to prevent them from coming back. Remember from episode 45 that you are the average of the 5 people you associate with most. If you are really ambitious, you must also consider that certain friends will anchor you in mediocrity. Swiftly terminate these also toxic friendships to ignite your meteoric rise to greatness. There are several ways you can do this, all of which are acceptable techniques for you to employ as the situation calls for it. No technique is better than the others, but some techniques will work better for certain individuals in certain circumstances. You can use any technique in isolation, combination, or succession, but you must be prepared to use the right technique for the right circumstances at the right time, and adapt your strategy to the unfolding situation. When you've decided you need to terminate a toxic friendship, you must enact your mission audaciously, and you must not hesitate or renege on your plan. Here are the 5 techniques that you need to have in your arsenal. Technique number 1, the amicable separation. This is the most peaceful way to terminate a friendship. It involves a rational discussion with the individual that communicates the intention to terminate the friendship with them. This breakup technique is commonly used in long-term intimate relationships, but can also be used to break up a friendship. Intimate relationships are more frequently ended this way because of the closeness of the bond and the understanding that long-term monogamous relationships need to be formally broken off for people to form a new monogamous relationship. It's important for marriages to require this type of breakup to sort through the immediate lifestyle changes that result from the split. However, sometimes marriage breakups can progress to the catastrophic fallout, coming up shortly. 2 rational men can terminate a friendship using the amicable separation, although it's uncommon. The loose ends of the friendship do not need to be tied up for people to form other friendships. The redundance of this conversation means that it's more common for people to have the friendship amicably fade out. Technique number 2, the amicable fade out. The amicable fade out involves a transition period where you slowly detach yourself away from an individual or a group of people. You can create an amicable fade out in 2 ways. Method number 1, consistently reject your target's social suggestions. You can do this quickly by rejecting all social suggestions effective immediately, which will rid you of the toxic person quickly. The downside of this is that it's likely to trigger aggression or resentment in your target. This is because you are rapidly forcing someone to acquiesce to a new lifestyle that they'll be reluctant to accept. Their resentment and aggression may turn active into the catastrophic fallout, which will also achieve your objective. To mitigate the chances of this happening, you can use method number 2. Method number 2, stage the amicable fade out over time. As an example, you could draw out the rejection by rejecting 1 in 4 requests in month 1, 2 in 4 requests in month 2, 3 in 4 requests in month 3, and every request thereafter. Making the transition long enough will not stir as much resentment. This will also be the right course of action if you depend on the other individual or the group for something such as social connections, status, abilities, or an indispensable business partner, etc. Use them for a few more months until you can work out how to obtain what they provide for you before discarding of them. In the meantime, plan and deploy your exit strategy. Unfortunately, while easier in the beginning, there are many negatives with staging the amicable fade out over time. By drawing out the breakup, you expose yourself to continued suffering in a dead-end relationship. If they are toxic, you also expose yourself to further toxicity, which could poison you beyond the severance of the relationship, especially if they realise what is happening and they are susceptible to envy and revenge. During this period, you may also be confronted and challenged about your commitment to the individual or the group, which is what you were trying to avoid by using this technique. The last drawback will not be applicable when you know the other person is too cowardice to bring up your progressive rejection and diminishing commitment. Eventually, for these people, there will be a mutual understanding that the relationship has just run its course. If you need closure and like to tie off loose ends, then the immediate or drawn-out amicable fade-out technique is not for you. Additionally, this technique will not work for every target because egotistical people will not take no for an answer, stupid people will not take the hint, and insecure people will become excessively clingy, the opposite of your intentions. If the amicable fade-out technique is not having an effect, you will need to select another breakup technique and plan for it accordingly. On the other hand, this technique works great if you are not willing to have the confrontational breakup discussion. Whether you don't care anymore, you can't be bothered, or you suspect the other person may become combative. If you don't want to have this conversation, then use the amicable fade-out technique instead. Let your actions demonstrate your intentions. Most of the time, these breakup discussions are not necessary anyway, even for the best of friends. Sometimes everything that you need to communicate can be expressed without saying a word. Another situation where this technique is extremely useful is for when you need to break away from a group of people, or a smaller group needs to break away from the main group. Breaking away from a group of friends can be very intimidating, especially if you're breaking away from the group alone. Fortunately, this is not necessary if you choose to use the amicable fade-out technique instead. The reason this works so well is because a group of friends is much less likely to become egotistical because they have each other to bond with. This may not always be the case though. If your group of friends has a narcissistic group dynamic, then be prepared to be scapegoated. A narcissistic group leader will invent a reason that directs blame on the relationship breakdown to you. A narcissist cannot tolerate anyone breaking up with them. The reality of this causes them to feel pain on a deep unconscious level. In their eyes, they are perfect. They can't possibly have done anything wrong. Allow them the pleasure of blaming the relationship breakdown to you. Proceed with the end goal in mind. At the end of the day, all you ever really wanted was to remove them from your life by whatever means necessary. This will be made much easier if they can blame you for the relationship breakdown. Technique number 3, ghosting. Ghosting is a completely acceptable technique for breaking off a friendship. While some believe it to be cowardly, there is nothing cowardice from valuing your own life enough to take action and cease contact with toxic people. The true coward is the person who cannot end the friendship due to their own insecurities or the fear that they have no friends. Don't be a coward. Ghosting is a great technique when you don't have time to reject social assertions or explain yourself to another individual. It means that you make yourself your own mental point of origin. Ghosting is an extreme variation of the amicable fade out. You don't even reject their social suggestions, you ignore them completely. The medium becomes the message. It's not always the best strategy because it can inflict psychological harm on your target. I don't encourage ghosting people who are insecure, shy, or who have low self-esteem. It can cause too much damage. A lack of closure can cause a person to question everything about who they think they are. Neurotic people will often assume the worst, and this can torment them years into the future. Other less traumatic breakup techniques such as the amicable separation will work best for these individuals as they are less likely to become combative anyway. The longer the friendship, the stronger the bond and the more harm you will inflict, which is just not necessary. Inflicting harm should never be the purpose for selecting this technique. It should be used only when it's the best technique to break up a friendship. Psychologically healthy and virtuous individuals do not elect to take revenge on their former friends. They simply cut them loose in the most effective manner and move on. Ghosting works best for people that you are not that invested in, or where the friendship never really took off. You owe them no explanation. You simply just don't have time to explain yourself to everyone. It's just not necessary to formally establish the end of an association with everyone that you come into contact with. This is common sense and is widely socially acceptable. People mutually ghost each other all the time. They engage in a small conversation at a bar with someone, add each other on Instagram, and then cease all communication. It's a perfectly acceptable technique to use in the right circumstances. Technique number 4, the anti-seduction. This is a relatively simple technique to employ. It involves a subtle sabotage of the friendship by deliberately behaving in a repulsive manner towards your target. The goal is that eventually your anti-seductions will transfer enough negativity on your target that they terminate the friendship with you, which is what you wanted all along. The best repulsions are those that play on your target's insecurities. Use the knowledge that you have acquired from your friendship to understand what unsettles your target on a deep emotional level and then relentlessly apply your sabotage. You could also take away the essence of what they found attractive in you to begin with. Finally, you could remove the main activity or the basis of the friendship. If they can no longer benefit from you in a substantial way, then they are less likely to want to remain friends with you. Prolonged inattention, the essence of ghosting, is the most anti-seductive behaviour. Other common anti-seductive behaviours include nagging, insulting one's intelligence, frequent last-minute cancellations, always arriving late, excessive indulgence, windbaggery, excessive judgment, frequent whining or complaining, frequent interrupting, verbalising disinterest to one's experiences, and being tight with money or other resources, including praise, compliments, or your time. Understand that it is very likely that the toxic person that you are trying to anti-seduce displays many of these anti-seductive behaviours themselves. Infuriate them by mirroring their anti-seductive traits back at them. By holding up a mirror to their actions, you reflect their reality. Make them feel their behaviour is unpleasant. They may even see the toxicity behind their behaviour. This may cause them to undergo a transformation, at which point you may choose to rekindle the friendship. This technique should be your first selection if you aren't sure that you want to permanently break off the friendship. Demonstrate their own behaviour back to them as a last-ditch effort to change their ways. Most of you probably do this already whenever a friend pisses you off. Make this action deliberate and deploy the more effective anti-seduction techniques listed previously. The benefit of this technique is that it saves you energy. You don't even have to do anything. You just need to demonstrate anti-seductive traits to unsettle your target to the point of ending the friendship. Negatives of this technique include the uncertainty around when the friendship will end. Sometimes this could take a long time, especially if you provide them with a lot of value or they depend on you for a need they can't get met elsewhere. It also doesn't work for insecure people, as their insecurities prevent them from breaking up with people for fear of having no friends. A word of caution with this technique. Practicing anti-seductive behaviours over time will result in these behaviours becoming a part of you. Use this technique sparingly, for a short period of time, or as a precursor to another technique to catalyse the relationship breakdown. Technique number 5, the catastrophic fallout. This is the most painful and conflicting way to end a friendship, but it is also the quickest and most effective. The catastrophic fallout is an instant or semi-instant explosion of emotions, the result being that it abruptly ends the friendship. The catastrophic fallout will only work for a person who is not in control of their emotions. Someone who is in control of their emotions is most likely mature enough to realise the toxic aspect of this technique and move away from it. This is the essence of the anti-seductive technique mentioned previously. Individuals with a high level of maturity and rationality will respond better to the amicable separation technique. If you don't need to use this technique, then do not use it. Burning bridges is never the optimal way to terminate a friendship. Having said this, if you need to leverage the catastrophic fallout, there are 3 methods that you can use. Method number 1, fabricate it yourself. If you desire to fabricate the catastrophic fallout, then you will need to cultivate your aggressive side. Initiate the catastrophic fallout after a bad day at work, enabling you to concentrate your aggression, which you can direct into the conflict. Your anger will be more genuine, which is great if you are not naturally an aggressive person. Part of the catastrophic fallout is that it must be catastrophic. You deliberately permit all your suppressed issues to emerge in a short period of time. Plan your arguments out in advance. You need to appear as though you have lost control, but be in control at all times. Formulate and deliver your argument with overt communication. You need to make it obvious that you've been unhappy with them for some time, perhaps for years. Make it obvious that this is the last straw. Communicate that the bond is fractured beyond repair. Use the minimum force necessary to get the desired result. If your overt communication is not enough to produce the intended outcome, then you need to use more force. The next stage is to launch an all-out assault on their character, concentrating on their insecurities. Paralyse your target with your sudden attack and force them into the defensive. Throw in exaggerated half-truths to unhinge them from their rationality into an emotional response. Cover up any mistakes you might make by dominating the conversation. Always be talking over the other person. If they talk over you, talk louder and more aggressively to get a stronghold on the conversation. If they keep interrupting you, repeat yourself until they yield.
Attacked, we're getting anger, we're getting, you don't know nothing, you don't know what I do know. What I do know, what I do know, what I do know is of all the business people on this platform, the people who are going to have long-term success are not you.
You must dominate the conversation and rob them of their ability to defend your attack. This will only make them more aggressive, which will build up into a sensational climax, ending the friendship. When you sense they are about to explode, step back and allow them to self-destruct. Do not interrupt them as they do this. Remember, this form of the catastrophic fallout should be used as a last resort, and progressing to the final stage of this technique should not be taken lightly. It damages your image, especially if it's in public or is being recorded, or you have mutual friends that you want to maintain. It is rarely the best option, so use it as a last resort. The greatest victory is that which requires no battle. Sun Tzu from The Art of War. If done in person, there is always a chance of physical confrontation, so be prepared to fight or flight. You must not start a physical fight, but if a fight starts, you must be the one to finish it. If you are of equal physical strength, then you should be okay. An emotional fighter is a vulnerable fighter. This is why you must unhinge them first and remain hinged yourself, despite giving off the impression that you have lost control of your emotions. Again, with this form of the catastrophic fallout, you are demonstrating an anti-seductive trait to the extreme. The target is more likely to be okay with your intention to terminate the toxic friendship because of the toxic behaviour you have demonstrated. You are clearly out of line, and they cannot be held accountable for the failure of the relationship. This is often an acceptable outcome for a person with an extremely large ego. This person can continue to live their life in blissful ignorance, unaware that the unsettling effect they have on other people will continue to cause future relationships to break down. Method number 2. Manipulating the other person into instigating the catastrophic fallout. If your target is self-righteous, arrogant, or narcissistic, then you can manipulate them into instigating the catastrophic fallout. This option is the most desirable form of the catastrophic fallout. For these people, you may only need to provide a small spark for them to erupt in flames. You deliver a minor insult that strikes at their deepest insecurity. They react to this, and then you use their response to serve as the foundation of the catastrophic fallout. Essentially, you are manipulating them into the role of instigator, which means that you keep your hands clean. You are a blameless victim, nobly absorbing an onslaught. Stir up their aggression to yield a reaction, which you can use as a vehicle to cut ties. Do not allow your emotions to boil over. Leave this to them. Allow them the time they need to self-destruct. Again, do not interrupt them as they do this. This makes it that much more obvious that they instigated the catastrophic fallout that follows. If they bite and assume the role of instigator, then you need to capitalise on this opportunity. Take full advantage of their emotional explosion. Remember, most toxic people are so oblivious to their toxicity that they don't even know that they are toxic. Make their toxic traits turn active so you can illustrate it for them and they can no longer deny their destructive tendencies. This puts you in the best place to eliminate them from your life. Your target cannot blame you for the failure of the friendship because their actions directly preceded the breakdown. They will have to reluctantly accept that they blew the opportunity of a friendship with you. If this is your chosen method, then initiate the catastrophic fallout when they have had a bad day. You are looking to strike at the aggressive tendency within them, and the more that someone else has caused this aggression, the less you will have to say to yield the same result. Upon reflection, they may realise that some of their anger was misplaced, which adds to their guilt and increases your blamelessness. If the target doesn't bite, then you have selected the wrong candidate. Terminate the conversation or redirect the conversation into a form that resembles the amicable separation. Method number 3. Waiting until the other person causes an argument which you can turn into a catastrophic fallout. You can patiently wait until your target confronts you on a matter of contention. While you save the trouble planning, it costs you the ability to choose the circumstances that favour you best. When this happens, you must force the problem. Your plan must be executed with speed and force. The moment has presented itself. Now bury your fangs and attack. You must not hesitate. Again, you must take full advantage of their emotional explosion and deliberately say things to heighten their emotion to encourage the catastrophic fallout. The catastrophic fallout is a technique best reserved for the self-righteous, arrogant, or narcissistic people, or people with a lot of psychological repressions. You can ensure these people stay out of your life permanently if you are able to inflict enough trauma. Understand that you will have to deal with confrontation. You will need to have a thick skin to be able to deal with the conflict. This kind of conflict draws on very primitive emotions such as anger, violence, and isolation that will send their cortisol soaring. The trauma may even make them desire revenge for the pain that you've made them feel. This is why you must be careful of friends and the information you give to them, especially the toxic ones. Evaluate your exposure before you head down this path. Know your target and be aware of their desire and capability for revenge. Make sure that you're physically and psychologically stronger than them. If you don't have the emotional stability to withstand their attack, or you know the target will be brutal in their confrontation, rather than fuel the fire, escape the conversation and resort to ghosting them permanently. The catastrophic fallout can serve as a precursor to ghosting because you've already established that the friendship is fractured and the message you send by ghosting them will be heard loud and clear. The amicable separation, the amicable fade out, ghosting, and anti-seduction can all build emotional resentment that can result in a catastrophic fallout at any time. Always be prepared for this so you can plan your response if it happens. Once you commit to your termination mission, you must be prepared to take advantage of the catastrophic fallout if the opportunity presents itself. The momentary feeling of discomfort will be worth it once they are ostracised from your life. I've used this technique 3 times in my life, and the relief I felt afterwards is incomparable. As mentioned previously, the catastrophic fallout must be followed up with ghosting. Even if you think of something that you want to say after the fallout, resist the temptation. Any acknowledgement of the other individual will open up the door to rekindling the friendship, which you have just suffered to end. Don't erase your hard work, and don't feel guilty about the way you've treated them. These people don't feel bad about the way they've treated you, and they will just as easily find another victim to sink their teeth into. Remember, the goal is self-preservation. You should never feel guilty about looking after your own interests. Stay strong. The desperate and manipulative may try to re-enter your life when the trauma that you inflicted on them becomes manageable. Do not give in to this. You've done the hard part. The easy part is maintenance, and they will eventually give up. Now you have all the techniques you need to terminate toxic friendships. If you have work to do, start by eliminating the most toxic person you know. Once you can conquer this, you can terminate any toxic friendship. Having said all of this, don't be in such a rush to dismiss everyone out of your life. By all means, ostracize the most toxic types, but toxic friends and enemies can be useful if you're creative enough. See your enemies as a potential resource which you can use to your advantage until you no longer get value from them. Use them as a stepping stone that you can step on to keep your feet dry. Personally, I've found that my enemies have done more marketing for me and given me more publicity than any of my friends ever have. In fact, most often, friends are likely to be overcome with envy. On your rise to the top, you'll come to discover that some of your best allies will become your biggest haters, and your biggest haters will become your best allies. Be aware of this, and learn when to discard of friends and how to use your enemies. If you are seeking greatness and don't have any enemies, find a way to make some. There is a multitude of benefits to having enemies, including motivation, accountability, and utility. If the animosity between enemies is well understood, befriending an enemy with a hidden agenda can be extremely useful because enemies have more to prove to you. If you provide enough value and they believe a genuine friendship is on the horizon, they will need to work extra hard to convince you of their transformation. This can be useful because it provides you with a loaded exchange that works in your favour. The liberty you get from not really needing them will allow you to control the frame of the friendship. To establish this false friendship, you need to get them to open up to you. To get them to open up to you, tell them something about yourself. This works best if it's a vulnerability that strikes at a deep insecurity of theirs. It doesn't even have to be real. In fact, it's better if it isn't. You want to keep your own vulnerabilities a secret from them to minimise the damage that they could cause to you when you eventually need a discard of them. The purpose is to lull them into a false sense of security. This will allow you to extract personal information about their vulnerabilities, which you can leverage to your advantage in the future. Watch your enemies carefully. Everyone has a vulnerability. This could be anything from a weakness to an insecurity or a secret desire. Issues like this stem from our earliest years to what we once felt was missing in our lives, what others didn't give to us, or what we couldn't give to ourselves. The missing piece lurks within their subconscious. If you can be the one to provide them with the missing piece that they are unaware they crave, you can make people bend to your will. The beauty of using an enemy is that they are expendable. You don't really care if something bad happens to them as a consequence. It's unfortunate for them, but understand that these toxic people have inflicted more harm on others than you will ever do to them. I argue that they've brought this upon themselves with their unsettling effect on other people. Once you are done with this person and you no longer have a use for them, you should shamelessly discard of them using one of the 5 techniques outlined in this episode. Finally, you must remember that you are not invaluable either. You must consider that your friends are plotting to terminate ties with you. This could be because you are actually toxic yourself, or you are moving in 2 different paths, or your successes trigger their insecurities. Whatever the reason, when this happens, you must pause to reflect on your contribution to the failure of the relationship. If they lose control of their emotions, seemingly out of nowhere, it's likely that this resentment was building long before. It can be hard to see the fallout coming, and you may be blindsided by this. This is quite common for people with a high level of self-interest and increasing prospect in the world of social media. The consequence of failing to consider that friends can turn against you is that their betrayal will catch you out. Things can change slowly over time, so it may help to analyse things compared to years previous. Pay attention to their behaviour. Has it changed to the way they have been historically? When a person is planning to end a friendship, deceitful people will even begin to treat you nicer, a ploy to cover up their true intentions. Has the friend turned more aggressive or toxic? Look for signs of jealousy, envy, and aggression that is slightly more active than previously. Always consider that your friends could turn against you at any moment. You'll be better prepared for the moment when it comes. Remember, from within a friendship, people are better poised to destroy you. Be careful about how vulnerable you are with your friends. It may also be prudent to maintain some distance and to keep some deep personal information to yourself, for in the wrong hands, this could ruin you. Understand that the closer the bond, the more oblivious you become. Love and infatuation have a habit of blinding us to reality. Always take a step back from your feelings and judge each situation as rationally as you can, using deductive reasoning and logical analysis of behaviour. Thanks for watching today's episode. In episode 72, I'll cover the 4 stages of competence. Subscribe and click the bell icon to be notified when it drops. Catch you then.